Hello, Chris. How you doing?
Doing well, Connor. How are you?
Doing great. This is Connor, and this is Chris. Welcome to Way Too Spooky Podcast.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Connor, for the introduction. Again, this is the Way Too Spooky Podcast, where we plan to talk to you about what?
I don't know, just the spookiest damn movies you've ever heard or listened to or talk about or remember or think you remember. But I like it. It's already so spooky because we're probably coming from the spookiest place ever, which is Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The home of Signs, right?
Yes, Signs with Mel Gibson. He's a spooky guy, too. Yeah, but we're not talking about him today.
No, but we are from the spookiest place on earth. It's Bucks County. But there's a lot of fields, a lot of... what do they call it? The crop circles?
Crop signs. They're real, those crop signs. Yeah. But actually, what's even spookier is this basement, this dungeon that we're in.
Yeah, we're in my basement, which I've converted into a spooky room. And, well, we thought the best option for us would be to create a podcast, let you guys know the facts of everything that we know about Halloween. And hopefully our listeners, your longtime fans, or... new fans, and you want to learn something new because we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of spooky knowledge, that is.
Yeah, and it's honestly, this is just the same thing we've been doing for years. We just talk horror movies, and we just watch them anyway. It's one of the things we like to do. So if you're one of those dorks just like us who kind of like to, just watch some of the dumbest horror movies, some of the spookiest horror movies, and just give your thoughts and opinions on it, well, this is the podcast for you. Or it's not. I don't give a shit. Don't listen to it. But we're going to have fun anyway. We've known each other since elementary school, right?
Yeah. And we definitely should be probably doing more of our parental things right now, like mowing the grass.
No,
and,
I don't want to do any of that.
Doing the dishes, but we're down here doing a huge disservice to our families by giving you all this information about spooky movies from 70s, 80s, and 90s and forward. And
we'll take suggestions at some point, too, because the truth is the first movie we're going to talk about today, I never even heard of. I'm not a zombie horror guy at all. I just don't care for them. But I will say I was amused by the first episode we're going to talk about today, and that was Return of the Living Dead.
That's right, Return of the Living Dead. I grew up thinking, or knowing that I heard Night of the Living Dead or The Living Dead Returns, all those, but Return of the Living Dead, I don't think I ever really truly picked up on what this movie was about until I recently watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised. And so that'll be our first topic, our first movie on our first podcast, and we thought that might be a way to not only initiate ourselves into the podcast, but as well as our listeners as well.
Yeah, because for something that we've never seen, I was kind of like, all right, well, this is going to be new for me too. But we're going to rate these movies. We're not going to give a grade. We're just going to give us more of a spectrum. If it's Spookless, which means it was absolute garbage, not too spooky, spooky, or way too spooky.
Right. But scale of 1 to 4, Spookless being the worst, not too spooky being the second worst, spooky 3 out of 4, and way too spooky. Man, we were peeing our pants. We might poop our pants. It's that spooky.
Yeah,
right? And those are rare. Those are very rare to find. You got the classics, the 80s, from the 80s, the 70s, but now it feels like they're far and few between. And so we're hoping that we find some gems throughout this podcast.
And by all means, after you like and subscribe and start listening to us, tell us what goddamn idiots we are for not agreeing with your rating scale as well, because it's all an opinion, but we like to hear other people's point of view when it comes to this. But some facts about this movie, Chris.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can certainly, real quick before we get into the movie, I can certainly tell you that there are a lot of really shitty horror movies that I watch. One in particular we've been watching for the past 10 years, The Howling 7, which we will be getting into an episode.
That's going to be like a 5-part series just on that movie.
It is the worst movie you'll ever see, but it still falls in.
We still do the classics.
It's a classic. We do the classic slasher movies, but some opinions are going to be what is wrong with this guy? Get these guys off the airwaves. They're taking up valuable hard drive space in the
you may just delete us after that episode, which is fine. We're not going to be for everybody, but I promise you at some point we will do, whether it's a remake, a classic version, or something that you don't think anybody else knows. We're going to touch on all those bases, so we'll be all right. Just enjoy us for the journey and shut up and just drive and listen to our podcast. So you know what? Let's not even talk about the movie. Just subscribe right now and like our podcast. Way too spooky.
Please.
Yeah, please. Come on. I'm not going to give you any content on anything I think about.
All right.
But anyway, this movie was actually, you just told me this just now. It was released on August 16th, 1985, which is literally one day after I was born. So I don't know about you, but that shit's way too spooky already.
Oh, my word. I know. I'm not going to give my rating just yet, but I should say I did like this movie. And so, it was filmed by director Dan O'Brien. He's also known for doing the screenplay of Aliens, which I actually didn't know that until I saw this. And actually, one fun fact about this movie is that he suffered from Crohn's disease. This guy, and that gave him actually gave him the inspiration for the chest bursting scene in Alien. So this is the guy who's done Aliens, but he's behind the camera for Return of the Living Dead, and he does a hell of a job. Again, I'm not a big zombie fan. Connor's not a big zombie fan, but this was well done, and it's totally watchable and it's enjoyable. There's a little bit of comedy and all. So
yeah, I think that's a great idea. That this guy really got lemons thrown his way in life, and I'm in such severe pain and I can't stop shitting myself, and then he created Aliens. So
yeah.
I don't want to hear anybody complain that they don't have an excuse to create.
Can you imagine
gold out there?
No. It doesn't take much, I don't think. You just gotta have the confidence, I guess, in yourself.
But no, I didn't know that until you told me that. But it actually grossed okay, right? 14.2 million, right?
Yeah.
This is 1985.
Yeah, and it's a horror movie. If it wasn't for the three slashers, you got the Michael Myers, the Jason Voorhees, the Freddy Krueger, they were bringing in decent box office, but even around that time frame, they weren't bringing too much of a draw. And
right.
So for it to be a zombie movie, I mean, that's pretty good. I don't recall. I think it was made for like $2 million, but it's did pretty well. It spawned 4 sequels, I think.
And there's a big zombie market out there. What was that show that was just out?
Walking Dead. Yeah,
Walking Dead. People love it. I don't know why. I just never cared about them. It's not that I ever was really scared of the slashers anyway, but I don't know. Something about just corpses walking towards you real slow did nothing for me. But I may have changed my opinion as far as being entertained by a zombie movie after this one.
Yeah, none of the cast, they're not great actors or actresses. It's all just some. I think they're known in the horror community. Clu Gallagher, actually, he plays Bert. He's the business owner where they store the trioxin, which is the gas that gets out by his coworker Frank, who's trying to show off to the new employee Freddy. And but it also stars a few other names that are pretty, I think, well known in the horror community. And Tom Matthews, which everyone will know him as Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. You've got Miguel A. Nunez Jr. He's Spider. He's one of the punk characters. He played Demon Winters in the Friday the 13th movie, A New Beginning, I think that was, in '85. And he also played Juana Man in Juana Man.
Wow, you guys can really take that piece of knowledge and just tell it to everybody you meet here on out after listening to that.
That's right. Yeah, every time someone starts a conversation with you at a party about Miguel A. Nunez, You're gonna say, "Oh, did you know that he was Juwanna Man and Juwanna Man?" People are gonna love it. It's just an icebreaker.
And people are like, do you want to get the hell out of my face right now? And that was a really bad joke. Sorry, I'm so sorry for you listeners. But
and they got two other big names. We got I wouldn't say big names, but names well known in the horror community across some of the slasher films. And there's Mark Venturini as Suicide, who's the most obnoxious character probably in this movie. He's got this chain coming from his lip to his ear. He's overly aggressive along with the rest of his friends.
Yeah,
and
that's peak '85 for you right
that's
there.
That's right.
I think.
Yeah, but he played Vic in Friday the 13th: A New Beginning, if you recall. When the heavier set dude looks like Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts, keeps asking if he can help him chop the wood, and he gives him a candy bar, and the guy just snaps, and he just cuts him to death. Well, that's the same guy that plays Suicide in this movie. So, and a little tidbit, I think he died in the 90s, I read somewhere along the lines, which is a shame. He died of leukemia, but so this was late in his career, if you will, in that way. And then there's Linnea Quigley. I never know if I'm saying the name correctly, but she plays Trash. But she's a very well-known screen
Was she
queen.
the one with the pink hair in the movie?
The pink hair,
yes.
and actually there's a funny part in the movie that we'll get into, I guess, or hopefully we'll
I think I know what you're talking about.
But she kind of goes into one of her tirades where it seems like she's very horny, right?
Yeah, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. She says, she wants just to be eaten. How does she want to die? And she wants to be eaten by a group of old men.
Right.
And later on in the movie, she gets eaten by zombies, but it looks to be a group of old men, and she's screaming. She can't believe that's actually happening. So,
but then she comes back as a real wild zombie,
a nude zombie with a big jaw. Yeah. So, to break it down, the movie's pretty simplistic in the sense that it's a zombie movie. But in this specific case, this kind of introduced some new things to the zombie movie. Well, and it's known for introducing the popular concept of zombies eating your brains, whereas zombies always tried to eat your flesh.
So that was never a thing before that.
It's never a thing before that. No.
So it's so weird because I always thought that was just synonymous with one another.
No.
That zombies always like to eat your brain.
Nope.
I didn't have a lot of knowledge on zombies.
And I thought the same thing, right? You don't again, not being a big zombie fan. So I learned a lot about this. This is kind of the first for a lot. So it's like a trailblazer for horror zombie movies. And in addition, you really couldn't you can't kill them in this case. They just keep coming back. Their body parts keep moving and all. So it's all these concepts that really were never introduced before then in '85. And you think that was just a tale as old as time when it comes to horror movies, but no, it's really only what was that 35 years old? 40 years, almost 40 years.
85. Well, 37. So
30, almost 40 years.
Well, actually, that one zombie that was like cut off at the spine that they tried to tie down in that one scene.
Yeah.
She explained, like he was trying to get some scientific research out of her, like why do you need to eat brains?
Yeah.
It's the only time they could relieve themselves of pain of decaying.
Right.
So I don't know if they tried to make a correlation between consuming more knowledge or something.
Well, like I said earlier, with Dan O'Brien, the director, he had Crohn's disease, right? Yeah. So he's got this pain, and it's I don't know enough about it, but I've heard that people, who have Crohn's disease are in a lot of pain all the time. So you wonder if that gave him some inspiration for, maybe brains is something else for him.
Yeah, and you mentioned that what spawned them to turn into zombies was that trioxin. I could have sworn, because I watched it just like this week, I thought they said it was 245 trans, and I looked it up, and it's something for like silicone or something, so it's real. But apparently he made the connection. The guy who worked at the warehouse, the army used it for it was marijuana reasons.
Right. He mentions that. Frank does, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was not a stoner movie at all, but I can totally see stoners loving this movie or cracking up at it because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but it's not so over the top. Like it's a good storyline. So so we could just start with your overall thoughts on it before we actually rate it. Did you like this movie?
Yeah, I did like the movie. I really did. I was pleasantly surprised. I saw it in the most obscure of places. My older brother, he won a trip to Mexico, and his wife couldn't go, and so he took me with him. And there was one day, it was after quite a bit of drinking. We didn't want to hang out by the sun anymore because it was so blazing hot. He's like, "Do you want to watch a cool zombie movie?" And so we wound up watching this on his laptop, and I was pleasantly surprised. It had
was that just on TV there? That's something you would watch in like a third world country because it's the only thing they're playing.
I mean, there's more to that story. Anyways, I got stuck there because I tested positive for COVID, and so I wound up having to watch whatever was available to me, and that was one of the few things left on my laptop to watch. So I watched it again.
And apparently the only remedy they have in Mexico, or was it Mexico is where you were?
It was in Mexico, yeah.
For COVID at that time was trioxin, and then you started eating people's brains. Is that what?
That's right. I went away from the constant buffet of food and just started eating humans.
Yeah, so what I actually pulled me in right away from this movie was the very beginning. It was it was kind of like, all right, this is definitely a movie from '85. It can give you some nostalgia for 80s movies. Sometimes I would find myself rewatching like an old Jason Voorhees movie and never finish it.
Right.
But I like the vibe of it.
Yeah.
I like horror movies from that era,
yeah,
70s, 80s, because it gave you a certain feel. But the score, as soon as that music started, and we're going to kind of do this throughout our podcast. If you didn't recognize our intro music, that is, after you hear Way Too Spooky, the music that kicks in is actually the movie, the theme song.
Yeah, and I'll tell you,
I
have to say, it gives Halloween's theme song, I think, it contends. It might give it a run for its money, which is probably the most well-known.
We're already just going to lose half the people who are just tuning in right now.
No, man, this is one of those songs you can put on YouTube on repeat.
It's actually really good. It's weird. It sounded like... I don't know. I want to say it's Jerry Bruckheimer or it's Kenny Loggins. It was like it sounded a little like Top Gun as soon as it started, but then it goes on. It takes you on that journey, and then the visual effects of like that zombie just slowly getting more red.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, I could watch this, and I did like the one. That was the zombie that became that weird slinky one that looks like it's covered in oil.
Oh yeah. Tarman.
Tarman.
Yeah.
So I've heard Tarman before. Is that what people
That's
were referring
who he is.
to?
That's Tarman. Yeah, it's Spider, who again, I hate to bring him up so much, but he's so popular. It's Miguel A. Nunez, who's known as Spider and also played Juwanna Man and Juwanna Man. He actually calls that zombie Tarman towards the end, before they all meet their untimely death.
It only makes sense that we should just completely derail and just talk about Juwanna Man, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, guys, we're going to pack this in. It's not a horror podcast. It's just we're
guys,
talking about...
we just fooled you. We're going to make a podcast that only talks about Juwanna Man.
And I don't think that's fair, Connor. I think we can also expand upon the vast catalog of movies that Miguel A. Nunez has probably done. So.
Yeah, we could. I mean, you could talk about that guy for hours.
He's like the equivalent for me of he's like a John Leguizamo.
Was he the one in the back of the convertible scene, like towards the was he reading?
No, he's the black guy.
Oh, he's the black guy.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Because I think he's the only one in that movie.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. You know what? That's funny. That scene right there. It reminded me of what's that very popular movie during the 80s? There were Gangs in New York. Not Gangs of New York, but I can't stand it. I'm drawing a blank on it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It looked like it was just peak punk 80s.
Yeah,
is what it was.
Well, and that's how they always portrayed the punks, I think, in the 80s, right? It was
loud, over the top.
Remember the RoboCop movies?
Oh yeah, that's another good example of how I would like the menace. They were just menacing, loud, obnoxious people. So there is that element that you have to kind of just look past if you're not into that.
Yeah,
but they are, these are the group of the people who would.
I think they're very anti-establishment, almost in a way.
In that, especially at that time,
that's the way they portrayed the characters. If you weren't the final girl, which this movie has no final girl or final person, really.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's always they portrayed those individuals as punks, which, I wish those people were still around or were around. I don't think they ever really existed.
You mean like a hardcore cool punk?
Yeah, like I want punks like that.
You want punks that aren't going to try to cancel you?
Yeah. No, I just want them walking down with a huge-ass boombox on their shoulders.
And like a butterfly switchblade knife.
Yeah, say things like, "What's wrong with you, man?" But like things like that, just in beautiful Bucks County, that would be quite the surprise for me.
Yeah, so anyway, this trioxin releases, right? So these guys are working in this warehouse where they make cadavers.
So no, they're like a medical supply
company.
Yeah, so they do have cadavers. They've got, like I said, I don't know if it's supposed to be a real skeleton in the beginning or those plastic skeletons.
Yeah, I've seen all those skeletons at like Spirit Halloween. Yeah. I mean, but mind you, this is 1985. It didn't look the best. Right. But this place was a medical company where, they would provide like corpses or skeletons for like colleges or universities.
Right. For dissections and all.
Yes.
And for studying, human anatomy and or animal anatomy.
And what happens is they accidentally got something from the United States Army.
That's right.
As far as an experiment going wrong where they tried to spray this chemical onto some corpses, but it literally brought them back to life where they were twitching and moving around. He didn't say it brought them back to life, but he says they were reacting to it.
Yeah, that's Frank. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the movie. He's like... He's the complete cause of all this. He's what gets the trioxin out in the first place. But he just seems like a good dude. He always talks about needing to get home to his wife. And he just seems like a good dude.
And then he takes on the apprentice, the guy who you said was in Jason Voorhees, right?
Tom Matthews.
Yes,
yeah, that's Frankie.
And
Freddie. I apologize.
So he lets him in on this little secret about this myth or this legend of what the United States Army tried to keep secret, and they accidentally sent these corpses to his warehouse or something. It got mixed up in order, so it stayed in
their basement, their cellar,
in a container. Right. So and this is within the first 10, not even 7 minutes.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably like the low point of the movie. It's because it's pre anything happening. You're trying to establish who the characters are, and it's totally watchable, but you wouldn't know it was a zombie movie up until probably the first 10 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
So they do that. He tells him this urban legend. He goes, "I'll go show you." Takes him into the basement. He uses Windex and he clears off the top of this canister. And then you see that corpse just looking at you. And it's it's phony looking. Whatever. It's 85. Whatever. And then he goes, "Is this just really going to hold in all this trioxin or whatever?" And that's when he said, "Oh, this was made by the Army of Engineers." And he hits it. And then as soon as that smoke comes out, that intro music you heard comes out. And what I liked about it is kind of like, all right, for a movie this old and this corny but entertaining, you kind of got to get right to the point.
Yeah.
And then it just started, and I was like, oh, this could be entertaining.
But what I like, that's my favorite probably part of the movie. It got me hooked right there. Again, the music starts playing, but not only does the music do the movie enough justice, it's the scenery showing what's happening with this gas getting out, and it's pretty neat how that all starts to work and things start to come, go through the vents, and the frozen cadaver, it just starts to twitch and come to life. And
and if anybody doesn't know what a cadaver is, it's an actual like dehydrated corpse, right?
Yeah. I have to assume that if you're listening to this podcast, you like horror movies, and if you don't know what a cadaver is, then I'm quite concerned. But yes, that's exactly what that is. So.
And so there's a puppy that was sliced in half for medical reasons, and that started twitching and moving around on the ground. And then it got into the ventilation system, and then these guys freak out, and then it became one thing after another where they didn't know what to do because that body came out of the freezer.
Yeah.
And it's tried to attack them, eat them. So they cut it up into several pieces, and then they took it to a crematorium right across the street.
Yeah, that's the homeowner Bert for the medical supplies. He goes across the street to Ernie. I think his name's Ernie.
Yeah.
He's the what is the crematorium? What do they call those people?
The people who they prep the bodies with a bomb and float and all that stuff, but they have a crematorium there too.
A pallbearer, right?
Those are the guys like you and I who are asked to carry.
I knew that.
Yeah. If that's the case, if that's what a pallbearer is, then we're all qualified to bomb bodies.
I'm just thinking of the pallbearer from who followed the Undertaker around.
I hope I don't have to do your body one day. I'm just going to put the dumbest makeup on it and not not preserve your body at all.
Oh man, hey, the old say you can't spell a funeral without fun.
That's true.
People are just gonna be cracking up.
Yeah, make me look as dumb as possible at my funeral.
Oh my word.
Dress me up like a clown.
Yeah.
So the only way, because you could cut up into 1,000 pieces, but the body parts still move. So they took it to the crematorium. They burn it, but then the ashes went up, and then a storm came in, and then it carried, I guess, the ash. And right where all those punks were having a late night party at a cemetery, it started to rain down all that toxin.
And it's
that was burning that body.
Acid rain.
It was like an acid rain, and then it went into the graveyard and sunk it down to where all the corpses were.
Yeah.
And then they all came up, and then it was raining so hard, all those mean, nasty punks ran out of there. But the car, of course, just didn't start. Because I don't know if you know this, Chris, but cars won't start if it gets rained on.
Yeah, it's one of those movie cliches for horror movies. No cell phone. Well, actually, there was no cell phones, obviously, in that time frame. So that was the only thing that they had that could go wrong, really, and it did. So yeah, it's almost like three smaller subplots that interweave into one.
Yes.
You've got the people at the medical supply station.
Yeah.
You've got Ernie at the embalming and the crematorium, and then you've got this big group of punks that are just looking to meet up with their friend Freddie, who just got gassed by this trioxin from his employer.
Yeah.
So what? I guess after this rain, actually, then you start to see, which I really like this part of the movie, and I noticed that you had mentioned this, but as the movie progresses, you don't really know you have a general sense as to what's going to happen to Frank and to Freddie, who were the first victims of that gas leak, and which is crazy because that gas is probably just your gas.
Yeah.
When you fart is probably just as toxic, if not worse.
Probably, and every time, I let mine go, you guys just want to eat people's brains.
Oh man, that could be like weaponized. Your gas, it's horrible. Mine too. So whatever we could do.
Well,
but anyways, those three stories come together, and Freddie and Frank start to, I think, scene by scene, you start to see them get, they almost look a little more pale and sweaty and weaker, and they're starting to, not feel so good. But you really haven't experienced the first zombies yet, which is crazy. But so that takes a little bit of it's like a slow build in a sense. But once they start arriving, it just all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, and that's where I guess you board up all the windows, and they all kind of just that was a cathedral.
I think it was all in
church.
One.
Yeah, but that was like a church area.
Yeah, he embalms. It's a cemetery.
Okay, so
it's escaping me the name of those people. What they do, but he's
so you just die there.
He's a funeral director essentially.
So it's like a 3-in-1 deal where you can go to the church there, you can get cremated there, get your last rites, get cremated. Do it. I like those type of places. Yeah. I don't think you see too many of those, but that's definitely 1985 type of thing.
Yeah, well, totally.
So this is where all the zombies start to try to break in, and all those punks made their way. Those damn punks made their way into, the crematorium / church / whatever you want to call it. And they all work together to board up the windows and try to fight them one by one. But this is where the iconic hands coming in through the window type of thing.
That's all been done before, but
I only saw that one other place. It was the Thriller video.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I never watched anything like that before. I'm like, and this is where... What you told me, I didn't know what they were saying. They were just saying brains.
Yeah, that's all they want. They want
just
your brains. They don't care about the rest of you.
Yeah.
If there was a way you could still be living without brains, you'd be you couldn't get killed. I don't even know what I meant by that, but
well, apparently you got to eat the brain if you're a zombie and you want to relieve the pain of decaying.
And I think that's another part of this movie is I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but they first introduced running zombies in this movie.
Really? I didn't see that.
Running zombies, they'd never had.
I saw that one hobble around that was like
that was scary.
That was all right. I'll say that there's a scene in here where there's zombie outside of the ambulance outside. It's like eating a brain or whatever, and then it's like knees below were just cut off, and it just hobbled around like a little pirate and just kind of clicked its way up to the door. I'm like, all right, that was a little eerie.
Yeah.
So there is an element, there's something like that. It's kind of like, ew, that was just weird. Because you heard like the bones just clicking as it ran up the driveway towards the church.
You know, I was listening to the theme song actually, and so the first comment I read was that this is the theme song for COVID-19. And in a way, it kind of is. Like, you listen to that theme song, you're like, shit, like, shit's about to get real. Things just break down real fast.
Yeah.
But
there is no direct way to kill them.
No.
And then things get worse. And I don't want to jump right to the end yet. I don't know. There's a whole block in between.
Yeah. I mean, you start to see the gradual, but you know, immediate turn down of you know, Frank and Freddy, and so you know they start to get more and more pale and sick, and eventually they have to lock Freddy into the chapel because they don't think he's doing well enough, and Frank as well, and that's exactly when Freddy turns.
Wait, the paramedic came in first and took their temperature.
Oh yeah, that was.
And he was like 70 degrees.
He's like, "You're dead." You don't have a pulse.
By all means, straight across the board, they were just dead. So these guys were like reverse zombies. They were never dead. They didn't get this sprayed on them to come back to life. They were alive. They had this chemical sprayed on them that turned them to dead people who never actually died. So that was a different angle that I'd never seen. So it's the actual chemical that will make you into a brain-eating zombie. It's not that you need to be dead first.
Yeah. No.
So
it just turns you, regardless if you're dead or not.
So it will make you dead. So I would say that's the most powerful zombie of all because they still have all their moving parts and they're freshly dead.
Sure.
And that's when they turn. So it's kind of like, all right, so this chemical that was made I assume this chemical was made by the United States government.
Yeah.
Was part of the plan, which actually brings up the point that I totally forgot to mention. It was the colonel in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Who was on like 24/7 duty waiting for a certain phone call.
He's actually one of my favorite characters in the movie too. Colonel Glover, yeah, because his wife
Ethel.
Yeah. He's just always annoyed with her. He's always drinking alcohol, and she's like, "What is it?"
Well, he comes home, he has himself a bourbon, and then he answers her questions, and then it wasn't what he wanted for dinner. And then he goes, "God damn it, Ethel!" He says some shit like that. Yeah. But it's funny because you said Frank was the supervisor at the medical supply company.
Yeah.
He takes a phone call with his wife in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'll be home this time, honey. Yes, make sure that pot roast is nice and hot." I was like, I'm willing to bet maybe that kind of panned out in the early 90s because when you just had a casual conversation of a husband saying, "I want my pot roast hot" without even being mean.
That's real sexist nowadays.
You
get canceled for that stuff.
Yeah. But then I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but you don't see that in movies just casually. But it was even funnier from the old guy, the colonel, that her name had to be Ethel.
Oh yeah.
Because could you think of an older name than Ethel?
Yeah. My word. Yeah, it's very old school with that stuff, you know, and it hasn't aged well in that sense. But the plot is like, I don't know. It's weird saying this, but if there was going to be a zombie outbreak,
yeah. I
think that's how I want it to all happen.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that too.
Yeah,
and, you know, we're not big on spoiler alerts here. I don't. If you were grasping to see this movie since 1985 and you have it, well, I'm just going to tell you the ending. We'll get there anyway. But if not, just watch it before this anyway. But regardless, I realized the colonel had so much stress in his life. You know, no wonder So this guy is the plan C, D, E if shit really hits the fan.
Yeah.
So this was the chemical that the United States government created. And in the event that the situation that happened ever occurred and it had a snowball effect, it would just get out of control. And I don't even know where this town was, but it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Was it? It was like Kentucky or something?
I think it's in Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in Kentucky.
Like right outside Louisville or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. I think you're right.
Oh, see, my memory is okay.
Yeah. You're doing good.
I think it was 3 whole days ago that I watched this, but I've watched so much dumb bullshit between now and then, but that goes to show you that I've only watched this movie once, and it kind of stayed with me because there's so many horror movies that you could watch that you need to rewatch over and over again.
Gosh, I have watched. I've watched I love the Halloweens, the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm. I grew up on all that, the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but this, I've said this before already in the podcast, but a pleasant surprise, this movie. I don't know, it just it fits on a night. It's one of those movies that I think I'd go out and buy it on like DVD or Blu-ray.
If you're a collector,
and
you want a classic from that, I'll say this: it won't be my last time watching this. If it's just on, and I liked it because it wasn't too long. And they kind of wrapped it up nicely, which I enjoyed, which we're going to get to right now. So what happened was they couldn't contain the situation, and this colonel who has, I don't know, this certain classification to make, it's not to have certain codes to take care of a certain thing if things get too out of control, because they know this chemical was so lethal and there's nothing you can really do to stop them. He got the call that it happened in this town, and then he had to give out the coordinates to some other military base to shoot a nuclear weapon. And what I liked about it, it kind of just came up. Like, I thought there would have been a conclusion with some of the characters, but there just wasn't. And now, mind you, a lot of people need, like, a bow tied on top of their movie to give them peace for something. Like, well, there wasn't too many characters at all that you'd be like, wow, I really hope it turns out well for them, or that's going to be the hero, or she's going to do this, or at least these two will survive.
They'll be back for the sequel.
They'll be back for that. It's almost like the creators of this movie just knew, like, now, let's just make this fun as shit.
Yeah.
Let's just get to the point. And so basically they dropped a nuke
on like a few blocks of Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, and it completely eradicated them.
Right.
And then the intro music that you heard in the beginning kind of just kicked in.
And a storm comes in again. It takes all, I guess, the nuclear dust.
The nuclear dust, debris, the fallout.
And it goes back into the graveyards, and it's all going to start again. But I like the voiceover of Colonel Glover. He knows we did well. We only took it a few blocks. There's very minor casualties. Yeah, we'll be back up and running tomorrow. Like as if no big deal.
This terrible threat that he's been waiting for his entire career. This guy, I mean, he did what he had to do when the moment called for it.
Absolutely.
You nuke your own United States town or city.
Yeah.
And then he goes, we did what we had to do.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of the movie Outbreak. Remember where it was like Ebola?
It's like a more fun Outbreak.
Yeah.
I remember watching Outbreak and Contagion right when COVID hit. And I was like, man, this is scary as shit.
Yeah. Well, you notice they released the movie Contagion like right.
No, actually, that movie was really old. It's not really old.
But Netflix kind of, unless it just came popular again because people were streaming it or trying to.
Yeah.
They knew what they're doing. That's why this movie, I remember you called me up and you were freaking out. You're like, dude, this is just like Return of the Living Dead. I'm like, Chris, I've never even seen that movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
No.
And he's been in this. Wait until you see this basement. We're gonna have footage soon enough of this dungeon.
We're gonna try and start an Instagram page at the same time with this. A Way Too Spooky Instagram. You can get some views of my collection that I hope to continue to add to, and I guess behind the scenes, which we're sitting on a beat up folding table, but it's our workstation right now.
But that's the only way to watch spooky movies, you know.
Yeah, you'll see. You get a sense. It's a feeling, you know. To me and to Connor, it's a
vibe, dude.
It's a vibe. It's a way of life in a way. It's just like
something I'm always kind of just geared and attracted to. I have a few things in my life that are like that, but it's kind of like, I kind of, you know.
And I read something somewhere that you know, somebody that watches a lot of horror movies and scary movies, that, you know, if push came to shove in a let's say a moment of war or a moment of a pandemic, if you will, right? That, you know, you have a higher chance of survivability because you kind of seen that kind of stuff on that.
Well, that's especially true with you because you haven't left this basement in 3 years now.
4.
That's crazy. I mean, you have a wife and kids, and you don't even see them, and they're just upstairs.
I know.
That's nuts.
I'm the person that lives on what is it, the movie, The People That Live Under the Stairs?
Yeah, like
I'm
Children of
like
the Corn type of deal.
That's right, absolutely.
Well, so overall,
Well, let's real quick. Let's go back to just what our just to remind the listeners what our rating scale is, our scientific rating scale. It's a patent pending, right?
yeah, we got a lot of lawyers involved that are
people
gonna,
think that they have. Our competitors try to think they've they found a way to rate a movie, but we think that this is, gosh, a lot of resources put into this. But this it's the spooky.
a lot of suits and ties behind this,
It's the
guys.
way too
A lot of
spooky,
suits and
spooky
ties.
meter. So again, scale of 1 to 4, Spookless being
This
an
movie's a
absolute dud. You know,
lacks any real scares.
Yep.
You haven't noticed. It's kind of like watching Shaq and Kazam is scarier.
His
That's
acting skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 2 would be not too spooky. This movie's watchable with a scare, but a 13-year-old version of myself would sleep fine. 3 is spooky. Like, oh, this is pretty spooky. This is spooky. We're getting there. You know, blood, gore, jumps, sense of impending doom. You know, whatever. And way too spooky, which is tough to really hit that on the old Richter scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few that we know are the way too spookies. The
And mind you, I understand how horror works too, because there are movies that I could have shown you. You're like, that was good, but it wasn't too good because it imprinted me as a young kid.
Right.
And it still holds well to this day.
Sure, absolutely.
So I include when I rate my scale, if it's, you know, spookless, not too spooky. If there's a nostalgia effect too, that could, you know, influence if you think it's a good movie as far as horror is concerned.
Sure. So what'd you think of this movie? What'd you think of Return
You know
of the
what?
Dead?
I will not say it was spookless.
Yeah.
Because it was amusing. It was to the point. It was entertaining. It was not scary. However, there was that one weird little scene with the skeleton.
Yeah.
But
In terms
it's not garbage. So
absolutely not.
It's not garbage.
And I think that rating it gets on Rotten Tomatoes, which is like in the 90s.
Pretty accurate.
I think it's pretty accurate. I'd say it's
number 2.
I'd give it a spooky.
I'm gonna say it's not too spooky,
No.
but not too spooky was watchable with a scare here.
Yeah. All right.
Like, yeah.
I'd say it's spooky because I think it's. Hey, we've seen what a pandemic looks like. I'm sure it could be worse. You never know.
But tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah.
Or what you think of it.
Sure. Totally watchable though. It's got plenty of scares. I think if you like the zombie genre.
Yeah.
It definitely fits on a collector's a shelf. Along with the other classic movies.
And mind you, this was our first cast doing this together, and this is also my first review of ever been watching a zombie movie.
Yeah.
We review movies all the time, but this was the first time actually talking about a zombie movie.
Yeah.
So
So
I would suggest it.
Connor says not too spooky, but totally suggested. I say spooky and totally suggested as well.
If you had to have a drink or a beer with this movie, what would you be drinking?
This movie. This is like a late summer movie to me. So I'm still drinking
Coors Light, Bud Light.
Something not too heavy yet. This isn't a fall movie to
I
me.
like the old Miller Lite bottles that
Yeah.
they bought back.
Oh,
the
yeah.
cans.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is a little, not campy. I don't want to say campy, but it's a little.
It is campy, It's
Yeah.
got that. It's not to be taken too seriously, but
Yeah.
that's what I like sometimes about the campy movies is
Yeah.
just you just if you're willing to. We've got friends that are not willing to, but other friends are just kind of throw your inhibitions to the wind, if you will, like in a way, like just open up your mind and just don't take it too seriously, and it actually could be a little fun.
Yeah. So that was it. That was Chris. I'm Connor, and we're going to be on all the viewing platforms.
Although I do want to ask a few questions before we end this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If that's
Sorry.
all right with you.
Do it. Go for
I
it.
just want to get a general sense. Us being friends, I thought some questions I might not know about you. So, question number 1, Connor. If you had to be a section of the human centipede,
Middle.
what part would you be and why?
Middle. I get the best of both worlds. I mean, most people think you want to be the front end.
Yeah.
But I imagine if I'm going to go out in this world, I might as well be in the middle, having someone else, eat my own ass. Or, I don't know. I think the end piece would be fine because I imagine the centerpiece would die off a lot sooner before they could pass on whatever's been given to them. There's no good answer, Chris, but you definitely want to be the first, but then you're carrying all that guilt of passing it down to two other people.
That's true. Yeah. No.
So to answer your question, I want to be the guy who sews them together.
I don't even know what his name is, but
that evil German scientist.
Awful. All right. I guess, what's your favorite scary movie, would you say?
Well, it imprinted me at a young age. There's a lot of good horror that I like. Of course, I like the classics like you love, and we'll always get into that. Silver Bullet just holds a certain place in my heart.
Yeah.
It's a Stephen King movie. It's very Pocono-ish, and I grew up watching it at my parents' Pocono house.
Right.
And to this day, the theme music, the story, the score still holds really well. I'm kind of a werewolf guy.
And it's funny you say that.
Werewolves.
My 3-year-old son's a huge werewolf fan, and I was never one that loved werewolves and disliked them.
Yeah.
But I just, the underworld movies I never really liked, but or never had to go see it. But you introduced me to some of these movies, the Silver Bullets, the specifically Howling 7, not the others. And
well, the Howling 1 and 3 came in that super pack that we got.
Yeah.
But you obviously, when you see footage of this place, Chris is probably the biggest horror fan I know, let alone Halloween franchise.
Yeah.
It's Michael Myers, and
Absolutely.
you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, and that's my favorite scary movies. I mean, the Halloween movies. I'm going to let a lot of slack for this, but I'd say even growing up, I never even saw the first Halloween. I saw Halloween 2 first.
Right.
I remember my brother recorded it on VHS.
Yeah.
And my twin brother and we watched it before school one day. And that old feeling of, it's morning, I can watch a scary movie. I remember my heart beating out of my chest. And I'm like,
that it's the tone of that movie.
Yeah.
The music still holds up.
Absolutely. And I remember thinking, I watched it. I'm good.
Yeah, and that's where you were like, all right, I kind of like horror movies.
But nighttime hit. And I remember being scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
My parents are yelling at my older brother.
That was a movie because everybody caught that on AMC.
Mm-hmm.
And we're totally going to talk about even the Halloweens that nobody else talks about.
Yeah.
We're going to get into that too.
Yeah.
But that Silver Bullet is what imprinted me.
And Halloween 2, I would say, is what imprinted me.
It's
just that, it's that feeling of dread.
The time of year.
The time of year. It's the feeling
But it's the best time of year.
It is. I like being scared.
But that weather, everything about it is perfect.
So what would you say, one last question, what would you say is, when does spooky movie season usually hit you?
I say right now, late August, September, October.
Yeah.
But then, you can go through these periods throughout the winter that you could watch them. I like a lot, there's a lot of like supernatural stuff you can start watching that time of year.
Sure.
But that's a little bit about us.
Yep.
And where we come from. But if you're one of these dorks like us too, and you like this stuff, we're going to be on Instagram, YouTube.
We're going to try and get all over the podcast and
everywhere.
And
so
give us a listen.
Just follow Way Too Spooky.
Yeah.
And that's a 2, the number 2.
We're two normal guys, but we also just like scary movies.
That's it. And then, as you know, there's not enough content out there to listen to what you want to listen to. So we'll be covering all the bases. So that was Chris. I'm Connor. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the Way Too Spooky podcast.
Episode number 1. And if you listen to this, you're one of our first creeps and creatures.
Creeps and creatures.
You keep listening, and you can be a creeper or creature on our Patreon. So
that's right.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Have a good
rest
of
the
summer,
week.
everyone. Take care.
Later.